Speak to Win by Brian Tracy. I've been a fan of Brian Tracy's work now since 2005 when I came across his program, 21 Secrets of Self-Made Millionaires. And I remember listening to it over and over again when I was on my way to work and on my way home, because the information contained within it, as simple and pragmatic as it seemed, was so powerful that information went into my subconscious mind, and all those behaviors became the behaviors that I practice every single day. Very powerful program. Today we're going to talk about Speak to Win. Speak to Win, which is a book that is dedicated for anybody that is looking to improve their communication skills from the perspective of selling. Whether it's selling a product, a service, an idea, a philosophy, a belief system, or simply selling in the form of leadership as far as persuasion, getting your team members to perform in their optimal best ways, getting everybody on board with your vision and moving forward towards your vision. Your ability to communicate effectively is one of the most important qualities that you can have today, more so than ever before. Why so? Because we live in a time today where most of the things that we do can be automated, especially if you have an internet-based business. Email marketing, communication, social media, technology, tools are available to automate just about every part of the business except communication. You can record yourself and send it out there like I'm doing with this video, but I am still communicating. If it's prospecting or making sales calls or presentations that are live online, you are still communicating. If you're generating leads online and you're meeting your prospects offline to make a presentation or work a deal or to hire, you are still communicating. Therefore, the leverage today is to focus on improving your communication skills. And that's why I created that whole program on transforming yourself into an effective communicator. Now, a big part of this is your ability to sell and persuade. I also recommend watching the video that I did on spin selling by Neil Rackham, because that's all about the consultative advisory selling process, which, by the way, Brian Tracy is a huge fan of, and he's had many books and seminars and so forth on consultative selling. And there's a reason why. Consultative selling is one of the most powerful forms of selling, and if you can learn it and master it, you pretty much write the ticket for your life when it comes to wealth generation. Let's go ahead and get started. Introduction. One of the very best ways to become a better speaker is to listen to as many other speakers as possible. Take notes, observe how they walk, talk, move, and gesture. Observe how an experienced speaker opens a talk, transitions into the body of the talk, uses examples, illustrations, and humor, wraps up the talk, and concludes her time with the audience. Now, if it's selling and persuasion you are interested in, or influence-based communication, it's important to find people that you find are influential, that are actually influential. We're not interested in sounding nice. We're interested in effective communication for influence, behavioral change, sales, marketing, persuasion of an idea, and so forth. Who is it? Anyone that you know right now that is good at this, I want you to make a commitment to yourself that you are going to take notes, detailed notes, mind map notes, grab a notebook. Every time you hear this person communicate, you reflect back to the content of this video and this book, and you cross-reference to see where they are doing this, how they are doing it better, and adapt and adopt it to your style. In the earlier stages of becoming an effective communicator, you'll find yourself mimicking someone that is really effective. And then over the course, as you practice and you get better and better, your style will come out. You'll merge your style with their best practices and this kind of information, and you will become an effective communicator. Your communication style will be influential. People will listen and they will buy. And it goes beyond, as I said, products and services, your idea, your philosophy. The 4 Ds to speaking excellence. So, like with anything, these 4 Ds are very important. Number 1, desire. You must have an intense, burning desire to speak well. If your desire is strong enough and you want to achieve speaking mastery long enough, nothing can stop you from reaching your goal. But desire is not enough. Number 2, decision. You must make a decision that this very day that you are going to make an effort, overcome any obstacle, and do whatever it takes to become excellent. One of the things that I learned from Eben Pagan when I started out on my entrepreneurial journey, a couple of years prior to starting out on my entrepreneurial journey, is he said that there was 5 skills that if you develop these 5 skills, you could be dropped off to anywhere on the planet and you would be successful. You would generate wealth, you would build a social network, friends, you would live an amazing life. These were the 5 skills: public speaking, sales, marketing, language, and communication. These were the 5 skills. Everything with your ability to connect with another human being and build a relationship and persuade into a win-win outcome. So thus, it's an important decision to make, to dedicate the rest of your life to continuously improving your communication skill. I've made a commitment from that day when I heard that to do it, and it made a profound difference in my life. It improved my ability to communicate as far as sales, leadership, team building, everything, any form of communication. Even making these videos are a net result of improving my communication skills. Businesses, millions of dollars worth of transactions have been generated as a result of my cultivation of this core business skill, which is broken down, as Eben said, is 5 areas: public speaking, language, communication, sales, and marketing. To me, they're similar and there's differences. So we're going to focus more on the public speaking side, but you can cross-reference this to any other form of communication. In fact, I'm pulling some of my own reference experiences and pulling elements from this book and discussing it from my perspective so you can improve in all these 5 areas. Number 3 is discipline. You have to have the discipline to plan, prepare, and deliver talks and presentations over and over again until you achieve mastery. There are no shortcuts for hard work in developing an essential skill. That goes for anything. When I made a commitment that I was going to develop these abilities, my ability to communicate effectively, to speak publicly, I looked for any opportunity that I could speak in front of an audience. And in the earlier stages of building my IT business, I took on a deal with Iris Reading, where I was teaching speed reading workshops, and I continue to do so till this day. And I've done hundreds of these speed reading workshops, public workshops, private workshops, students 1 or 2 at a time, to hundreds at a time, practicing and refining my communication skill. After every single event, I reflected upon each of the performance pieces and the elements as far as communication and being effective and delivering the presentation, and continuously made incremental improvements. And the results started to increase based on feedback, based on performance, based on results for the students, and it carried over in my ability to sell when it comes to meetings, selling on stage, and selling through YouTube, and communicating effectively through information that I share with you through these books, influencing behavioral changes. So discipline, decision, desire, and then determination. Finally, you must have the determination to persist and persevere in spite of short-term setback, obstacle, or embarrassment you may experience. One of the fears that we have when it comes to communication is rejection. You have to become okay with becoming and experiencing the feeling, or experiencing, I should say, the feeling of rejection, whatever it is. In the earlier stages, it's going to hurt you emotionally. It's not going to feel good. But in later stages, you're going to evolve and transmute that, and you're going to become invigorated by rejection. This is one of the things that I found to be commonality between those that are effective communicators. In earlier stages, they come from a background of shyness. They were afraid of criticism and so forth, but they realized that it was that criticism, that rejection, that gave them optimization data on how to improve. And so they associate now rejection, and a good book to read is Go for No, and I did a discussion on that. I'll put a link in the description. They associate rejection with optimization and moving forward towards a success. The obstacle is away, and that is another discussion I did on Ryan Holiday's book, which I recommend you watch. So be prepared to feel criticism, rejection, and those emotions, and learn to work through it, overcome it. Work with someone, a mentor or coach, because this is something you're going to have to go through. I remember through my journey of improving communication skills and public speaking skills, I have been received in a lot of times from that space of rejection or disagreement or criticism and so forth, but you learn how to get over it. And these are some of the things that you'll encounter in your journey, and you have to develop the self-confidence and faith to be able to rise above it. And watch the video I did on the self-confidence formula by Napoleon Hill to help you with that. Our greatest enemies are always our own doubts and fears, but there are no limits to what you can be, do, or have except the limits you place on yourself. And the reason why I put this quote in here from the book is I want you to realize one very important element when it comes to improving your communication skills or speaking to sell or speaking to win. As you go through this journey in the earlier stages, you're going to be very reactive to the people you're talking to the audience and so forth. But then as you evolve, you're going to go into the cause space. The audience is going to react and respond to you. And it's the fears, doubts, and indecisions that are within you that is going to be the determining factor of if you remain the effect when you're communicating and you're reactive, which is, by the way, not what the audience wants, or they are on the receiving end and they're responding and entertained and reacting to you in a positive way. So as you go through your journey of improving your communication skills, your public speaking skills, it's important to write down and note the areas of your communication prior, during, and after the communications, the talks that you deliver, on where fears, doubts, and indecision show up, and go to work on them. So there are three components of your message. Number one is your words. The words you use are vitally important and must be selected with care. What you say and how you say it, but let's talk more about what you say, reveals to you about who you are. And more importantly, it reveals your trustworthiness, your confidence, and your authority to the people that you are communicating with. And if you don't learn how to adjust your words and elevate your words, then the performance and the output will always remain the same. That's because people are cross-referencing and relating what you are saying and the words you're choosing based on your ability to serve them. Think about this for a moment. Some of the most effective communicators, and I recommend studying Jay Abraham because I believe he's one of the most effective communicators I've seen. His ability to choose words and communicate effectively with those words, and by the way, he dedicates a large part of his cultivation of his skill to developing his and expanding his vocabulary. If you ever study his stuff, he talks about this many times. The words that he used and his ability to dimensionalize and pick different kinds of words and use it in different scenarios has a profound impact on the person that he's communicating with. And so increasing your vocabulary and choosing the right words, you don't have to try to sound nice. Remember, we're not talking about sounding nice here. We're talking about effectively communicating clearly and choosing words that are uplifting, inspiring, encouraging, and understood by the person that you are communicating with or the audience that you're communicating with. Your ability to do this is going to have a huge impact on your ability to persuade and sell. Next is tone. Now, tone is said to make up 38% of the message. 38% of the message. So it's not just the words, but your tonality. And your tonality comes from deep within yourself. It's your congruence and your belief in yourself, which is developed through practice and experience, wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge plus experience. So when you learn something and you have experience with that, what you have learned, you have acquired wisdom. And wisdom is presented through tone. So you can listen to somebody communicate, and through the tonality, you can determine if they have the wisdom. So tone is very important. Let's talk about tone for a moment here, because a large part of my communication on YouTube here and through these presentations is done through words and tone. You can't really see my body language unless you're one of my coaching clients or you've been to one of my events, or if I make a video, that's when I put emphasis more so on my body language. But most of the effectiveness of my communication comes through the words and the tone. So let's talk about vocal mastery. Slowing down. When you speak more slowly, your voice has more power and authority. Your listeners have an opportunity to absorb and reflect on what you are saying. You exude confidence. Energy. Energy is essential. The most important element of excellent speaking is energy. Speaking has been described as enthusiastic conversation projected at a higher level of energy to more people and over a greater distance. So adjusting the energy when we're communicating is very important because it's going to be received. Now, a good book to read is The Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort. And in that book, he talks about the different elements that helped him become an effective communicator, and enthusiasm being one of them. So how do you build vocal power? The human voice is like a muscle. It can be made stronger with exercise and use. Many people with weak voices have become powerful, confident speakers by building their voices over time with exercise. One of the best techniques for building your voice power is to read poetry aloud. Poetry. Why so? Because this puts you in flow. See, flow, which by the way is a very important book to read, along with The Rise of Superman by Stephen Kotler. Flow, when you have the ability to go into flow, you communicate a lot more eloquently and fluidly and dynamically in a way that's engaging, entertaining, and it has the message being delivered effectively. Otherwise, you're going to sound too logical, and it's not going to be received as well. Or if you're too much in maybe a flowy side, you're not going to be able to effectively deliver your message in a way that is sequential and understood. You want a good combination of combining the message with fluidity and dynamic and almost improv nature. So one of the best techniques for building your vocal power is to read poetry aloud. Select a piece of poetry that you are particularly enjoying, memorize it, and then recite it regularly as you drive or walk around. When you recite a piece of poetry, imagine that you are making a dramatic presentation in front of a large number of people. Put emotion, strength, emphasis, and energy into your words, and go slowly. Now, another thing you can do, and something that I do to practice this, is I take a scenario and I poeticize it. So let's say you're walking down the street and you're walking with someone. You could talk about the environment and do it in a way where it's almost poetic. You could talk about the essence of the energy that's being felt, how the trees are waving and the sun is reflecting off the waters, and communicate this way. Not only is it a form of practice, but it teaches you how to communicate in flow. If you are not used to doing something like this, it could be kind of difficult, but the repetition of doing this pays off dividend when you do your presentation. Because, one of my favorite sayings is how you do one thing is how you do everything. So the more opportunities where you can practice communicating effectively from a place of flow, the better you will be during your presentation, because that's where the congruence comes from. Another valuable, important tip is to record and listen to your own voice. As you develop your ability to speak powerfully, record yourself reading poetry or parts of plays into a phone or record on a Skype recorder conversations that you have with people, or just open up an app and record, or the recorder on your phone. Replay these recordings over and over, looking for ways to improve the pronunciation, delivery, and pacing. Another thing you can do is record your conversations that you have with people. So one of the things that I do in my coaching and my consulting business is I record all the conversations. Now, I give it to my clients, but another reason why I do it is I review the conversations. And I review how my words, my tonality, and my delivery has an impact on the other person, and how to improve on it. And over the years of constant repetition of doing this, I found that there is a direct correlation between my voice tonality and the other person's ability to understand and implement the behavioral change. Because as mentioned, we're not communicating to sound nice, we're communicating to create a behavioral change. And voice tonality has a powerful impact on a person's ability to understand and realize and form connects in their mind. It's almost hypnotic and trance-like in nature, which, by the way, is how we learn in the first place, is by stimulating parts of the imagination. Someone who has cultivated their ability to work with the voice tonality can stimulate the imagination in the other person. And when you're coaching, consulting, and leading, you're not trying to tell someone what to do, because that's not effective communicating. You're communicating with the person. They feel that there's a dialogue where both of you are one. And then what happens is you create the mastermind, spirit of harmony. The spirit of harmony, or the mastermind, is created when two people come together in conversation that's flow like this, flow-based conversation. I talk about this in my training programs, flow-based conversation. And they come up with ideas that are a lot of times better than what I'm communicating. So recording conversations is the pathway to get to this place. And then finally, we've got body language. 55% of the message that is contained in the speaker, or 55% of the message is contained in the speaker's body language. This is because there's 22 times as many nerves from the eye to the brain as from the ear to the brain. Now, this is something where we're not going to talk about body language as much, but there's a few things that I've realized to be really effective. So number one is smiling and animated with your gestures. Animated with your gestures, and then expanding your energy and allowing it to flow outwards rather than contracting. So you can feel your posture when you're communicating if you're contracting or you're expanding. Now, there's plenty of videos out there on body language, but those are the three things that I keep into consideration for me to improve my ability to persuade and communicate effectively when I'm using my body language. It is my presence, which is my eye contact with the other person. My energy, is it expansive? Is it being released and projected outwards? Is there a light smile on my face and a lighthearted, pleasing personality type of energy so that any tension is broken? And are my gestures animated? Now, I want to talk about prospecting, because a large part when it comes to communication, especially in today's world, has to do with prospecting. See, we live in a beautiful time right now because you have access to just about anybody that you want to connect with. And the internet has opened up the door. Social media and so forth has given us the ability to connect with everyone and anyone that we could ever want. But a lot of us kind of still operate from a scarcity mentality where we think that everybody is interested in buying or should buy what we are selling. In the world we live in today, we can create such custom messaging to speak so directly to the people that we want to communicate that it's actually a waste of time to try to be general. And so prospecting is a very important skill worth cultivating. And I want to bring emphasis on this because the book is about, all these different things that you can do to improve your communication skills as far as speaking. But I want to pull the main points that I believe are the most valuable for you based on the discussions we've had so far. So prospecting being one of them. So this is, again, reflecting upon my experience in coaching and consulting, because I consult with a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners and so forth, and one of the weakest areas is their prospecting. They're trying to market and sell to individuals that are not interested in buying, and they're wasting their advertising dollars and their sales efforts. When we can realize that we have access to just about everyone, so we can identify who our prospects are, then we can reach out to them and we can communicate effectively to them and implement what we're learning here to them, and that's going to increase our success. So the idea here is prospects versus suspects. So ask yourself, with everybody that you're communicating with in your business, is this a prospect or is it a suspect? Is it someone that I think may be interested in this and you're kind of being nebulous about it? Or is it someone that you know falls within the criteria of the ideal prospect, the person that you're trying to reach, the individual that has the certain criteria that makes up the individuals that do business with you? Now, this is something that you learn as you continuously build your business. I personally believe that very rarely do I meet someone who knows their ideal prospect right at the beginning. It's through experience of connecting, communicating, selling, marketing, that you start to hone in and discover who your prospect is. So it's important then to note the characteristics. Maybe your prospects fall in a certain age group. Maybe your prospects make up a certain gender. Maybe your prospects are interested in certain kinds of topics, and these topics might not be directly related to what you're selling, but they're interested in those topics. So you can find out where they hang out, where those interests are, and you can market to them at that platform. For example, Facebook is a great example. So Facebook marketing and selling on Facebook has become a big thing now. Many companies are investing millions of dollars in advertising on Facebook simply because it works. And the reason why it works is because everybody's on there. But people aren't necessarily on there to buy stuff. They're there to connect with their friends and family and share their pictures and so forth. But they are there, and they're in these different groups, and they're doing things. And they have different kinds of interests. So those that are astute in marketing on Facebook have learned how to intersect the conversations that they're having with their friends and family and geared them towards a marketing message. This is same to be said about, going to a certain kind of event, for example. Maybe your prospects, if you sell, let's say you sell real estate, but you notice that the kind of people that buy from you are more into health and wellness because you've got a certain kind of philosophy and maybe your personality attracts people that are into health and wellness, a certain kind of clientele. And you go in and look at the profile of your prospects and you uncover that, hey, 99% of them are into health and wellness. It would then make sense to maybe position yourself and do a talk in a health and wellness conference, not necessarily about real estate, but about something related to health and wellness, and then connect it and tie it back to what you do so that your audience who is going to be there anyways is going to get value about what they are interested in, but they're building a relationship with you, and you can mention it. Now, this is something that you get better at with practice, integrating what it is I'm talking about right here, but it is something that is a net result of good prospecting. A lot of times I found when I was building my IT business, and what I do right now, is I can find prospects and clients in the most unexpected places where others in my industry just won't look because they're so fixated on, if somebody's looking for IT services that you got to sell at maybe a certain kind of conference, or if people are interested in business consulting, they go to a business consulting conference. That's not necessarily true. There are places where people will buy business consulting or IT services that are outside of even sales to IT services or anything to do. And a lot of times their guard is down and they're not being bombarded by salespeople. But if you connect to them at those events, they're going to be more likely to be open to you and doing business with you. So the power of prospecting goes broad spectrum. And so dedicate some time to develop your ability to prospect. Now, the first step in selling is prospecting, finding people who can buy and will buy your product or service within a reasonable period of time. Prospects begin with you determining exactly who your ideal customer is. Now, there's a whole study and area, and I recommend dedicating as much time as possible to developing your customer avatar and learning the depths of prospecting. And that's why I recommend spin selling, because a large part of spin selling is asking questions so you can identify the needs, pains, and desires of your prospect and communicate accordingly. In the book, he talks about the 4 requirements of a good prospect. First, the prospect must have a pain that has not been alleviated. The prospect must have felt dissatisfaction or have an area of discomfort that is bothering him or making him unhappy. Before you begin selling, you should identify exactly what pain an ideal prospect would have that your product or service can take away. Now, why would we want to do this as far as selling or speaking to win or speaking to sell? Because we want to speak to these pains. We want to talk about these pains, and we want to communicate of how we have the solution for these pains. Second, a good prospect is someone who has a problem that has not been solved. Sometimes this problem is clear to the prospect, and sometimes it is unclear. And in some cases, it can be non-existent. But in any case, you must define the problem that your product or service solves in a cost-effective way. Now, think about this for a moment. Sometimes the problem is unclear to your prospect. They don't realize they have the problem. So in your presentation, by going to these certain events where your prospects are, you can communicate to them in a way to help them understand that they have something that is within them that they need to address in order to get the results they want. And your presentation is designed to help them see that and then relate it back to your product or service or working with you. Third, the prospect has a need and has not yet been satisfied. She wants some sort of improvement in her life that your product can deliver. What is that need that your product or service fulfills? So this is where we talk about benefits, not features. See, most entrepreneurs, when they start out on this journey, they focus on the features. My product, my service, it does this, it does that. But if the prospect's not interested in that, you're not talking to them. They're not listening. What's more powerful is to listen and identify what areas they want as far as benefits and create those benefits in your product or service, or communicate how your product fulfills in that area and provides those benefits. So again, we're reflecting back on this prospecting elements because we're going to use this information for our presentation. You see how this works? This valuable information is what we build our presentation on. We do not build our presentation on trying to sound nice and impress people. You can impress people and the most powerful way to impress people is by giving them results, by producing results. One of the best things that I've learned in this journey of public speaking and communication and marketing is people vote with their wallets. If you can get somebody to pull out their credit card and give it to you, that's far more effective as far as value to that person than them saying to you, wow, that was a really nice presentation. You sound really nice on stage and it was very beautiful. And then they just kind of walk away from that. That's not how you build a business. People vote with their wallets. Fourth, a good prospect is someone who has a goal that he has not achieved. Your job is to determine what that goal or improvement your product or service enables your prospect to achieve in a timely and cost-effective way. So prospecting is about making it about the other person, number one, figuring out what they are interested in, what pains, frustration, needs, desires that they have, that they want solved or they want alleviated or they want to experience, and then creating products and services that they will buy. Okay, that's what real value is in the realm of entrepreneurship or in the realm of speaking to win or speaking to sell. The starting point of preparation is your audience. Remember, it's not about you, it's about them. Begin as if you were a market researcher and you are determined to understand your customers fully. Who are they exactly? Who will be in the audience? This is the key to an effective talk and an effective preparation. And one of the things that I highly recommend that you do is go over to the link in the description and watch the video on Jay Abraham's strategy of preeminence. This is really going to help you understand this stuff to a really deep level. What you want to do is infuse in yourself the ability to make it about the other person. Okay, make it about the other person. And that is what's going to flow from your words, your voice tonality, and your gestures authentically and congruently during the presentations. If you do this right, then it is going to be a natural form of expression, and that's when you're really going to sell, and that's when you're really going to influence. So here are some key points to, we talk about these things at a certain level. Let's get a little deeper into it to help you go down the track of making it about the other person. Again, recommend watching that video, Strategy of Preeminence, very important. So making it about the other person. What are their goals and aspirations? What are their hopes and fears as they relate to your subject? What needs do they have that you can fulfill with your comments and your ideas in your presentation? This is all stuff you're going to take and use to build your presentation. The presentation is about them. What are the values and beliefs? What are their values and beliefs? Very important, their values and beliefs. What is sort of religious feelings and comments that they have, political orientation, if applicable? What are their worries, concerns, or problems? So prospecting, understanding the prospects at a really deep level is going to help you with the next part. And again, I recommend reading this book because this book goes a lot deeper into what we're going to talk about and what we have been talking about. So let's look at the structure for the talks, and let's take all that we've learned from prospecting and so forth and build upon it based on, now it's time to, structure of the talks, creating your presentation. You got short talks and longer speeches. And by the way, how you do one thing is how you do everything. When you get good at constructing short presentations or long presentations, what you'll find is you'll be better on telephone sales. You'll be better in doing small meetings and presentations because all of these principles can be adjusted and integrated in any form of communication that involves speaking to win. So short talks, part one. Part one is the opening. You simply tell the audience what you're going to say in your speech. For example, you could say, thank you for being here. In the next few minutes, I want to tell you about 3 big problems we're facing in our industry today, and the actions we can take to turn them into advantages in the months ahead. This opening sets the stage and prepares your audience and gives your speech a track to run on. So it helps them realize if they're in the right place that, this is for them. And if you've done your homework on your prospecting, then this should speak very personally and directly to them. Number 2, the second part is to tell them what you promised in the opening. This can consist of 1, 2, or 3 points. I like to use 3 points. If it's a short speech, it should only include 3 points developed in a sequence. For example, you might say, we're facing increased competition, shrinking profit margins, and changing customer taste. Let's look at each of these in order and consider alternative ways for dealing with them effectively. Part 3, the third part of speaking, is a summary of what you just told the audience. You should never expect your listeners to memorize everything that you've said the first time they're here, and the repetition helps. So if you summarize it, it brings back the key points, the key benefits in a way that relates to them. Remember, in a way that relates to them. And summarizing and making it enjoyable for the audience and engaging. And then finally, a call to action. If you're looking to sell something, you have to tie what they are experiencing, the new information you have provided, to your product and service, and that call to action is how you deliver it. So you could say something like, now that you've listened to this presentation, and I'm just paraphrasing off the top of my mind here, but you have to really sit down and think about this and say, now that you've listened to what I said and you see how it can help you in this situation that you may not have experienced before, but you may experience in the future as a result of the continuous progression of how things are evolving, I've created something that can really help you, and we can talk about it. If you would like to book a call with me, you can reach out to me using, my email here, or you can be very more direct with that and say, the problem that we've talked about is something that is going to not go away unless a solution exists, which, by the way, we've created the solution. As you can see, it is the only solution available in this specific scenario. And today we're going to take on a handful of clients. If you're interested, you can see us. We'll be at the back of the room, or you can go over to our website and so forth. Structure for longer speeches. So now we're taking the shorter structure and we're expanding and building upon it. And as far as longer speeches, the idea is they're giving you more time. One of the key things to remember as far as selling is AIDA: attention, interest, desire, and action. You grab their attention, making it about them. You build their interest and the desire to want to do business with you, and you give them a call to action. Now, in longer presentations, there's going to be more nuance points, more areas to discuss, more helping them overcome objections, perhaps even some Q&A to help them understand and realize certain elements of how it's of benefit to them, or to address any questions or concerns that it has. And you can incorporate these pieces into your speeches. But let's look at the formula that was given in the book. Number 1 is the opening. The purpose of an opening is to get the audience attention. Okay, build expectations and focus listeners on the speaker. There is no point in talking if no one is listening. So we have to get the attention first. Now, when you do your prospecting right, you know how to structure that first couple minutes, because they've never met you before. So we'll talk about, how somebody can present you if you're being introduced on the stage and framing that in the right way. But they've never met you before. So right off the beginning, you have to connect with them in a way where it's disarming, perhaps a little joke, and right away make it about them and talk about the purpose of the presentation and communicate in a way that it is related to them. So the introduction, this is where you tell the audience what is coming and why it is important. Again, they're giving you only a couple minutes, and first impressions matter. The first point, this is where you transition into the body of your talk. The first point sets the stage and begins to deliver on your initial promise. Then we move into the transition into the point. You must make it clear that you have finished with the first point and are now moving on to the other. This is the art in and of itself. And again, all the details of how to do this are within the book. Number 5, the second point, this is the point you should follow logically from your first point. And number 6, another transition. Here you make it clear that you're moving onward to another subject. So again, these points are designed to help them see a perspective, an idea, a philosophy, a feature that is of benefit to them. It communicates to things that they might not be aware of. It might communicate to certain things that they are experiencing. And the different elements of your discussion on each point is to help them become more educated about the problem, perhaps some entertainment on it, some experiences and some case studies of how this problem has occurred with other companies or other people that you've dealt with and how you've helped them solve it. These are things that you can put into the points. So the number 6, another transition, make it clear that you're moving forward onto another subject. So we're keeping this relatively structured. Now, I do this structured, but I'm also loose and dynamic, and I might cross-reference the other points to further dimensionalize and help somebody understand and just make the presentation a lot more engaging by tying in other things that I talk about, which, by the way, you get better at with practice. So some of these things, you might be listening to me and saying, like, how do I incorporate all these things? Start with the basic structure, and then, as mentioned earlier, you take notes on each presentation that you do after, and then you come back to this video and go back to the book, and then you learn how to integrate the other pieces more and more so. Now, selling and the effectiveness of selling, or having the ability to effectively sell, is one of the most valuable skills, and it can be considered one of the most challenging skills that you can develop. So I'm not pronouncing this kind of stuff to be easy. I'm not saying that you would just take something like this and just go out there and implement it into work. There's a lot of nuance points. However, there's a lot of information that's available that'll help you build upon your practice. So the key here is to make a commitment that you're going to take what's being discussed here and start doing presentations or build upon the existing presentations that you have. So number 6, transition, make it clear that you're moving forward onto another subject. Number 7, third key point, this flows naturally from the first 2 points and begins moving towards the end of your talk. And then number 8, the summary. This is where you conclude with a call to action. And we'll get a little more detailed about call to actions because I think it's very important. Your whole purpose of this presentation is to speak to influence, speak to sell. And if you do not have a strong call to action at the end, then everything is going to be in vain. And this is where a lot of times people make a mistake. And I believe one of the reasons why the mistakes happen is because they have not identified something deep within their identity, their self-image, which is the fears, doubts, and indecision. See, asking somebody for the sale can be very petrifying. This is the point where you will potentially experience the most rejection. You did all this work and effort and energy to put together your presentation, and you're really hoping that people will buy or be influenced by what it is that you're talking about. And this is the point where you can feel a lot of tension within yourself, the call to action. And actually, this is the area where there's the most opportunity to note and write down. And when you record yourself, notice if your voice changes or your body language changes and you kind of rush to the end. All these are opportunities because you have to make your call to action strong. It has to be bold and it has to be related, and your audience has to feel a sense of confidence and transference of that confidence so that they realize that moving forward with this decision to work with you is in their best interest. So you've got to remain congruent all the way through. So there are things that you can do before the talk to help you with all this. Okay, so we talked about kind of a high-level structure of how to do the speeches and so forth. And if I was to get into the details, this video would go very long. So that's why I recommend reading this book. It gets into the details. But there are some things that really stand out for me and things that I do that I want to discuss that will help you and further dimensionalize what we've talked about. Before the talk, arrive early, preferably the day before, and walk through and familiarize with the entire setup. So you want to feel comfortable and you want to see how everything is set up. And this is something that I got very good at, making sure that it was part of my process, that I would arrive early and look around and just kind of see how everything is set up and familiarize myself and become comfortable. Because what you're really doing when you're communicating is state transference. And if there's a discomfort within you, then they're going to receive that. So we want to try to set everything up so that there's comfort right from the beginning. Now, this stuff might not seem like it has a huge amount of impact, but believe me, it does. I've tracked the numbers on my ability to sell and convert when communicating, and these little things of state transference, nuance points like that, have a profound impact on a person's trust and faith in the product and service that you're selling. Next, mix with your audience. Prior to your talk, mingle with the meeting planners and hosts, and if possible, some of the people that you will be part of your audience. Introduce yourself, ask for their names, and trying to learn a little bit about them. If you do this, a number of things happen. You break the tension. People will start to feel more connected with you. A lot of speakers who don't do this miss out on the opportunity of creating rapport and engagement with the audience and gathering valuable information that they will give to you, because you might even realize that you might have to improvise and adjust your communication accordingly. This is something that is a practice that I follow, checklist style. Okay? Before every event that I do, I will go and talk to the audience, as many as possible. I will greet, I will connect, I will ask them what brought them here, where they travel from. I will get into some discussion of their interest. I will find out why they're consuming this information, what they believe they'll get out of it. And I'll keep it very lighthearted. The key is to be very lighthearted. Another reason why this is a benefit is it gets you into flow. If you're not communicating with everyone, you just kind of show up and you just kind of stand waiting for your turn to go on stage, you'll get in your head and you'll be very disconnected with your audience. And you will feel that disconnect and you'll react to it, and then you'll start to feel even more awkward. So invest in a little bit more courage and go and talk to the people prior to the presentation, and you'll find yourself loosening up, relaxing, and even joking around. So when you jump on stage, you can even improv and use some of the things that you talk about to build upon your introduction. You can say, notice that a lot of people are visiting from California tonight, and we actually have a whole group that traveled all the way together on the same flight. And like just little things like that help. I remember doing a event, we did a speed reading workshop, and it was an entire group from Keller Williams Real Estate, and the entire group was Keller Williams, minus like 5 or 6 people, like literally 15, 20 real estate agents. So connecting with the audience helped me identify that and customize and adjust accordingly and discuss it in the beginning so that they felt really welcome, and that was 80% of the audience. Listen to the other speakers. If your speech follows one or more other speeches, it's important that you arrive early and listen to the earlier speakers. It is essential that you know what is being said so that the audience can what you're really doing when you listen to other speakers is, in a way, you're kind of building upon it and you're creating a contribution to their conversations, and you might even be able to cross-reference to the conversations. And a lot of times you'll find that if somebody already brought up something and you bring it up again like it's the first time, the audience will feel kind of disconnected. But if you're going to talk about the same thing, you might need to improvise it and adjust it and help build upon what the other speaker spoke about. So then the audience will pick up on that, because a lot of these things reveal, when you're speaking in front of an audience, you're revealing to them about yourself and your attentiveness and these different elements that we're going to talk about in a moment of what you want them to experience during the communication. And if you have the presence and the care and the just genuine interest of the audience, you would invest the time to show up and learn about what was being discussed so that you can create an overall better experience for the audience. Think of the entire, this is an event that you're doing and there's multiple speakers, the entire thing, the entire event is one big theatrical performance. And there's different sets or different stages or different scenes. And if you're disconnected from one of the scenes, the audience is going to feel disconnected. And this helps, by the way, for transferring the credibility over to you, because you can adjust your communication accordingly, where you can borrow credibility from another person by saying, what Jim said earlier, I agree with him fully, and I want to also add one of the things that I have discovered about this. And in the audience's mind, they position it as you are an authoritative person, a person of high confidence, and you're connected. Think on your feet. On several occasions, I planned my talk thoroughly in advance and then had to revise it quickly because of something the other speaker said just before I spoke. Sometimes speakers have used the same joke or story that I was going to use. So can you imagine that? If somebody said the same joke or the same story and then you didn't pay attention to that and you do it, like even though your presentation was really polished and you put everything together, that kind of, that breaks the rapport. Remember, see it as more of a theatrical performance, an information-based theatrical performance that's about not just entertaining the audience, but delivering value. Meet your introducer to ensure a strong introduction. So we talked about this earlier, okay? If someone is introducing you, you want to have them introduce you in the right way. And if you do not communicate with them and mention to them how you would like to be framed and introduced, because that's a huge framing, especially if the event is run by someone notable and the entire audience has a relationship with that person, that could be a determining factor of, and we talked about transferring credibility, that can be a determining factor of your positioning and your posturing. So what you want to do is meet and talk with the introducer Be sure you have prepared a written introduction and have them read it. And if there's anything that needs to be emphasized, you can say, please read this carefully. Please make sure that this is emphasized and so forth. Have a conversation and break the ice. Don't make it so formal and so forth. And just, one of the best things you could do with someone who's organizing an event and is going to essentially introduce you is build a connection with them and have them like you, create a sense of like and trust. And they will naturally present you in a better way, emphasizing the key points that you want them to emphasize. Now, during your talks, one of the things that he brought up in this book that I thought was really fascinating is the 6 A's of your audience. 6 things you want to keep into consideration during the presentation. So you've got the structure of the presentation, and remember, you're making it about them, which is a net result of your prospecting efforts. You're doing these things prior to going into the event so you can set the stage nicely. And during your event, you want to ensure that you're keeping in consideration these 6 areas, which is you building a rapport and connection with your audience. So number 1 is acceptance. So one of the deepest human needs is to be unconditionally accepted by others. So you want to include certain kind of elements in your presentation to communicate that you accept the audience and accept them for maybe they have different ideas and ways of looking at reality, but don't try to create this kind of disconnect between you and the audience, the other speakers. Create a sense of acceptance. Number 2 is appreciation. Anytime you express appreciation to another person or anything a person has said or done, you raise their self-esteem and increase your likability in their eyes. So one of the things that I learned from Jay Abraham is if you want to be the most interesting person, be the most interested. So convey your interest to the audience and communicate that in maybe going off on little riffs in your communication and bringing up certain elements that were shared to you as a result of interacting with your audience prior to the events, and show appreciation for the audience in different ways, thank them for being there, and so forth. Number 3 is admiration. Abraham Lincoln once said, everyone likes a compliment. When you compliment people on anything that they do or say, or on any of their positions, they feel more valuable and important, and they like you more as a result. Now, some of these things might be more applicable in smaller group dynamics or group presentations. So we're talking about speaking to sell. You have to vary it and adjust according to the size of the audience. There's nuances. In smaller groups, you have more of an opportunity to create a sense of acceptance for each person prior to and during appreciation and admiration. And the 4th is approval. You may have heard this saying, babies cry for it and grown men die for it. People need approval from others, especially people whom they look up to and respect. So if you're a person that is speaking to an audience that respects you, it's important to approve of them and the things that they're interested in, because then they're going to like you even more. They're going to respect you even more. Attention. People always pay attention to people and things that they value the most. As the saying goes, life is a study of attention. Whenever you pay close attention to another person, he or she feels more valuable and important. So as you are communicating, and more important in a smaller group, because you have the ability to do this, and I practice this during my smaller presentations and my smaller public speaking events, and 10 or 15 people groups, I would pay attention to each person. I would keep a mental note of my presentation and interacting with everyone, and kind of spread out my attention and energy so that I'm giving attention to each person individually all throughout the room as I'm going and doing my presentation, even while walking around the room. And number 6 is agreement. See, you can agree with somebody, and at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to believe what their point of view is. So there's 2 enemies of learning that I've discovered, and I've learned this from Eben Pagan, which is, I already knew that and I disagree. I already knew that and I disagree. When you disagree with somebody, right away, this wall gets put up and it goes into a place of conflict and I don't want to listen to you and so forth. That's not the kind of frame that you want to create when you're interacting with people. So what you can do is listen and understand another person's point of view. And if they have a point of view, you can encourage it, understand it from their perspective, and build upon it and add to it. This is where you develop, through communication skills, the ability to transition what someone says into something that acknowledges and empowers them, and also builds upon what it is you're talking about in a way that contributes to them but doesn't dishonor what it is that they're talking about. So this premise, everything we've talked about here, can be summed up in what I like to do, which was discussed in the book, is I avoid any form of criticism or negativity in my presentations. Now, some speakers might choose to do the criticism and negativity, and to each their own. I just find that I'm a lot more effective in my style and personality and the kind of people that I connect with if I avoid criticism and negativity and focus on what can be done and encouragement and so forth. And as a result of it, I find that the vibe and energy uplifts to the place where it's more influential. If you are leading a meeting, you have tremendous power. Everyone looks up to and defers to you as the leader. Everything you say is magnified and multiplied, either in a positive or negative way. So this applies for smaller groups and bigger groups. Whatever you say, if you say something and that's negative in criticism, somebody takes it the wrong way or a group takes it the wrong way, that energy can spread throughout the audience and that vibe can be felt, especially if it's someone that you are communicating with in the audience and there's something, they have a really strong frame or they have a lot of influence and you speak of some negativity and then all of a sudden you'll start to feel the vibe change. So to keep this in your favor, train yourself, and this is where words are really important. We mentioned this earlier. Words are very important. Train yourself to communicate in a way that speaks towards the positive. Now, let's talk about call to action. So you can do all these things, and then you could blow it as far as creating the behavioral change or the buying decision if you do not have a strong call to action. Let's talk about this for a moment. At the end of your talk, ask the audience to do something. It is not enough to end your speech and just let it petter out. You must make a strong statement and ask people to do something that they might not have done in the absence of your recommendations. The action you want people to take right now must be clear to the members of the audience, just as it must be clear to the customers. Talk to them about how much better off they will be after they have accepted your recommendations. This is equivalent of focusing on resales and referrals. In the final analysis, people change only because they feel they will be better off than they were before. So your closing remarks should emphasize how much better things will be for the members of your audience after they accept your advice or after they take the call to action. So one of the ways of doing this is, let's say your role or what you're looking to do is sell something on stage, maybe a product or service that you have to offer, and you've connected with the right audience, and they are the prospects that you've identified, and you're communicating to them about pains, frustrations, desires through your research that you know that the consensus is experiencing, and you emphasize it into your 3 points. You give credibility, or you emphasize the credibility that you have, the results, the case studies, your research, your finding, the scientific data, your experiences, your own story in a way that relates to them. You make it about them, and then you continue throughout the conversation and you answer questions and objections. And the goal is to have the right people who it's the right fit for, ideally most of them, to move into the next step of buying your product or service. You move into the last part of the presentation, which is the call to action, and you could say something like this. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and you realize that these problems or situations don't really just go away on their own. And what we've done is we've created a really powerful package to address these things. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We've got many other things that we've created. And what we really focused on in this presentation is the main areas that are of concern right now. And I'm sure that all of you will agree that this is the main areas of concern. And the implications of not addressing this is, net losses of this and frustration like that. And it's something that all of you will experience, and not to sound negative, as a result of just being in this nature of business and so forth. And so we've created this as something to help you with this, so you won't have to deal with the pains and frustrations and so forth. And we've got a lot of clients we've already worked with. And so what we'd like you to do right now is strongly consider working with us. We are taking applications at the back of the room. And when you participate in this, we will also throw in, for those of you that are in this room, a special 2 conversation consultation. It's not designed to sell you on other things, but it's really designed to help identify other areas, because we try to cover as much as we can in this presentation. But there's other things that we do as far as further elements that are further problems, but not only that, other ways of contributing to implementing what it is easier, faster. And it's really based on individual businesses. And as much as we generalize and say this is something that we all experience, which is true, each business in this room is unique and individual, and we honor that. And this is something we don't normally do. This is a special consulting deal that we give to certain clients that pay, X amount. You can quantify the value there, but we want to give this to you as a result of signing up today. So that's something that you can do to increase the conversion. So that would be a strong call to action. Again, I'm just paraphrasing and making this up. You have to really think about, when you're doing a call to action, the different elements of persuasion. There's a lot of information about crafting offers out there. Perhaps I'll do a whole video on crafting offers and the importance of that. Now, after you've done the call to action, it's also important to remember that not everybody is going to become a client. So one of the things that I emphasize in my communication training program is to see everyone as a potential long-term relationship. So you got clients and you get others that will refer people to you. You can potentially have partners at events, those that will partner with you and perhaps allow you to present your package and service and offering to their audience, because even though they might not buy it, they realize they have access to an audience that will buy it. You might end up meeting some advisors who have more experience that will give you some pointers on how to improve. Remember this, we go back to the start of this journey. This is all about improving. And you'll meet peers. Okay, one of the best things that happens to me as a result of doing more live events and presentations is I meet clients, I meet referral partners, I meet those that I could potentially joint venture with, I'll meet advisors, and I will meet peers, those that will be part of your mastermind, like-minded individuals that will come up to you after the event, and they'll be, so into the same kind of stuff that you're talking, and now you've created also an opportunity to have a mastermind. So don't just see this speaking to sell or speaking to win from a linear perspective. Look at it more multidimensional. Because if you look at it more multidimensional, then what's going to happen is you're laying the foundation for the next level of success by the various pathways that happen as a result of one thing, and that is taking action. So make a commitment to yourself that you're going to take action. You're going to book some public speaking events. You're going to implement what is being discussed over here and realize the potential, because I'll speak from experience. As a result of doing hundreds of live events, I have met many peers, many advisors, many clients, referral partners, joint ventures, and I have created business that is directly and indirectly related to that what I spoke about. That is a large percentage of the business that I've pulled in. If you want to copy this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching this video. We'll talk soon. Take care.